Hey, if you're new to my channel, then consider liking and subscribing. It would really mean a lot to me, and honestly, it'd make my day. If you already did, thank you so much. Oh, and by the way, if you like listening to fan fiction, check out my other channel. The link's in the description. Once again by TheVictor. A 7-year-old Luffy is approached by his future self. It seems Luffy's entire crew died at the hands of Fleet Admiral Akainu right after defeating the Yonko Kaido. Follow a much stronger, smarter Luffy as he repeats his adventure, hoping to avoid the same fate, as well as correct some mistakes. Adios.
46. The answer is Rubberman Enel stood in the middle of the ruins with his foot on top of Gonfall, towering over the man. The three Straw Hats as well as Wiper watched from the distance at the two men who faced each other. Enel had just about calmed down and stared at his unarmed foe. How can he be immune to lightning? He thought as he gritted his teeth. There is no living thing in the world that doesn't fear lightning, apart from me of course. But I'm God. He looked at Luffy, who continued to glare at him. I've seen him stretch. I don't know what this rubber is, but it seems it gives him the ability to stretch his body a considerable distance. He thought. It's a devil fruit, most likely paramecia. You know. Luffy began and startled him from his thoughts. There are plenty of people on the Blue Sea who could defeat you. He smirked. And yet you call yourself God, Enel. Luffy finished. Enel scowled. Insolent brat. He thought. They stared at each other for a few more moments. Enel seemed reluctant to attack. He knew the man before him had an immunity to his lightning powers. After a moment, said man smirked and pulled his right hand back. Gomu Gomu no, he announced and ran towards him. Enel shook his head repeatedly. Calm down, he thought to himself. Even if he is immune to my power, physical attacks won't affect my body. Pistol. Luffy completed and delivered a heavy punch into his gut. It wasn't hockey infused, but it still connected with the lightning body. Enel was blasted away from the old man underneath him and crashed into a ruin. Luffy helped the old man get back to his feet. How did you manage to hit him? Gonfall asked in astonishment. Luffy grinned. I'm rubber. He replied cheerfully. Gonfall looked at him in confusion, but then shook his head and headed toward the rest of the observers. Hey, how can he hit Enel? Wiper asked Zoro. Does he have Kairoseki, Sea Stone, on him or what? Zoro shook his head. He doesn't, he replied and smirked. He's just rubber. Wiper looked at him in confusion. What's this rubber you keep talking about? He asked. Robin looked at him. It's surprising that you don't know about it, she replied. But basically, rubber is a substance which doesn't conduct electricity. So lightning can't harm Luffy. They looked back at the battle scene, where Enel had finally gotten up. Don't get conceited, he yelled and charged towards Luffy with his golden staff. If I see that something won't work, then I'll just change my strategy. He attempted to smack his head with the staff, but Luffy ducked. Then he attempted to hit him into the ground. But Luffy jumped up in the air. Enel smirked and smacked upwards, hitting Luffy straight into the crotch. All the observers winced and Zoro unconsciously shielded his crotch with his free hand. Enel truly is a devil, Gonfall commented with one of his eyes closed. It seemed as if for one moment he could feel Luffy's pain. You said it, old man. Zoro agreed, wearing a similar expression. Luffy was sent flying into air by the strong hit and after a while he stopped by kicking the air. I wonder if Captain San will be still able to have children after this one. Robin commented in an emotionless tone. You damn woman. Zoro growled. She chuckled. It isn't funny, it hurts like hell. For once I agree with Zoro, Nami said with widened eyes. It did look painful. Luffy landed on the ground. Despite being hit where he seemed unaffected. He was rubber after all. He glared at Enel. Scratching another man's balls is kinda. Well, gay. He thought to himself. Enel ran towards him with his staff and smacked down on him. But Luffy sidestepped it. The self-proclaimed god then lifted his staff and smacked with it sideways, attempting to hit Luffy's head. The staff was blocked by Luffy's right hand. Enel then raised his left hand, which was free at the time and pointed the palm at Luffy. El Thor! He yelled and a huge electric blast was released from his palm straight into Luffy, who stayed at the spot. By now, Enel knew that lightning wouldn't hurt Luffy, but that was not his intention. The electrical discharge sent Luffy tumbling backward, but he quickly regained his position. However, that was Enel's intention. The self-proclaimed god was already at him and had raised his staff with both hands and smacked Luffy across the head, sending him flying into the distance. However, he didn't stop there. Just as the pirate was about to crash into a ruin, he appeared above him using his lightning-fast speed and hit him into the ground. Nami, who was among the observers, looked at Zoro with uncertainty, but he just smirked, so she didn't say anything. Enel jumped backwards, away from Luffy. He thought he had at least damaged his opponent somewhat. He did not really expect to have defeated Luffy with those hits, but he did think that he would at least have trouble standing up or would be a bit bloodied. What he did not expect was for Luffy to simply jump back into a standing position without the slightest sign of any damage. Sure, he looked dirtied and his clothes were a little charred because of the lightning, but he looked perfectly fine. That won't work either. Luffy smirked. Enel's eyes widened. Lightning won't work, he muttered. Physical attacks won't work. Just what is rubber? He sighed. No, wait. He's a simple paramecia. I've already seen what he can do. He continued quietly, believing Luffy doesn't hear him. The pirate smirked. Along with observation haki, his hearing has improved tremendously. After all, the first step to mastering observation is often to train your senses. Enel laughed. If I can't harm you with a staff, then I'll use something else. The self-proclaimed god announced pompously. Lightning surrounded the golden staff. Gloam paddling, he announced, and the staff changed its shape into a trident. I have no time to play with the likes of you, Enel yelled and charged at Luffy, who dodged the trident. Yahahaha, as I thought. You are vulnerable to piercing attacks, he announced with his arrogant voice. Yeah, Luffy confirmed. Nami face palmed after hearing that. Idiot, she yelled with razor-sharp teeth. Don't tell him that. Zoro chuckled. Relax, Nami. He told her, it's not like he can take on Luffy. Luffy continued to dodge the trident for a few moments, and then when he finally got tired of dodging, he pulled back both of his arms and prepared to attack. Gomu Gomu no Bazooka. Luffy yelled as his arms snapped into the front to execute his most powerful normal attack. The self-proclaimed god moved back with the power of lighting and successfully dodged the blow. Luffy smirked. He relaxed his posture somewhat, leaving his arms hanging. So, what do you call a man who defeats a god? He asked and grinned. His opponent gritted his teeth in anger and lunged forward, barely missing Luffy with his sharp weapon. There is no such man, he yelled in anger. Luffy pulled back his right fist. Armament, he murmured, and the fist blackened. He punched forward, but Enel turned into lightning, avoided the punch and appeared behind him. God can't be defeated by a mere man, much less a simple paramecia. Enel smirked arrogantly and stabbed forward with his trident. Luffy raised his right foot and kicked the air beneath it. In doing so, he still used too much force and accidentally sent himself flying into the air, but he stopped himself by turning around and kicking the air above him with his outstretched right leg. Again, he used an inappropriate amount of force since he still had very little idea on how much was required. He was sent flying toward the ruins. Just as he was about to crash, he grabbed hold of one of the larger ruined buildings and stopped himself. He twisted his body around in a way that would be unnatural to anyone but him and threw himself in Enel's direction. The logia appeared before him in the air with the trident pointed in his direction, expecting Luffy to impale himself. He instead kicked the air under and he flung himself above Enel, preventing himself from getting into contact with the weapon. Enel turned into lighting and appeared above him and stabbed underneath, but Luffy dodged and grabbed the trident from the side, raised it in the air together with Enel and threw them both into the ground. Enel did not crash into ground, as he turned into lighting a moment before doing so. He was back at Luffy again. The rubber man stretched his right leg sideways and whipped Enel from the right with it. The logia spat out blood as he finally stopped himself in the air. He glared at Luffy, who motioned for him to come get him with a smirk. He lunged toward his opponent with his trident. Luffy again sidestepped the weapon, but then punched forward with right hand. The self-proclaimed god turned into lighting and moved backward, but while he was able to avoid most of the damage, he still got hit. He reformed back into his body and spat out more blood. Zoro smirked as he watched from the ruins. That lighting bastard has no chance against Luffy, he thought. He can barely even keep up with him. How can this battle be happening? Gonfall asked as he saw Luffy stop himself from falling by kicking the air, which sent him accidentally crashing towards Enel, who had just recomposed himself from the hit. How is he fighting in the air? Captain Sand has become capable of using an air walking technique, Robin replied, causing him to look at her in astonishment. After a moment they turned back to the battle, where Luffy avoided getting hit by the trident by kicking the air, though he again used a lot more leg force than necessary, so it sent him crashing into the nearest giant tree. She sweat dropped. Though he isn't very good at it, she added after a moment. He nodded a few times. Back at the battlefield, Enel appeared behind Luffy, who was trying to free his head from the tree trunk. He stabbed forward with his trident and Luffy used his observation haki to dodge the stab. Because Enel also used observation however, he anticipated the dodge, so he struck differently. What happened then was that Luffy was stabbed on the side with one of the trident's teeth. He managed to avoid the worst however. His opponent removed the trident from his body and prepared to strike him again, but Luffy hardened his head with armament haki and pulled it out and struck Enel in the chest with his Gomu Gomu no backwards bell or something of the sort. Enel crashed down into the ruins and Luffy turned around and jumped after him. After a few moments Enel rose up again, though this time he had some trouble. He spat out more blood. "Yahahaha! I got you," he announced arrogantly, like he had already won with that single stab. He pointed at Luffy. "Oh, that?" Luffy asked as he lifted the fabric of his cardigan on his left side, revealing a nasty-looking wound, from which blood flowed freely. The three straw hats winced upon seeing this. Nami covered her mouth with her hand in shock. "Don't think you've won by giving me such a small wound." Luffy continued mockingly. "I barely even feel that." "Small wound," he says, Nami muttered in disbelief. "If you're God, then shouldn't you have killed me by now?" Luffy asked and smirked. "Instead you brag about getting one hit in." He took a step forward. "I'm still standing," he added. Enel gritted his teeth and attacked again. This time, Luffy dodged the attempted stab again, but then gripped the golden weapon with his right hand and stretched back his left arm and armored it. "Gomu Gomu no pistol," he announced and punched forward. Enel concentrated too much on getting the trident from Luffy's hand, so when he noticed what Luffy was about to do, he had no time to avoid the punch. Subsequently, he was sent flying. Without his weapon, Luffy looked at the golden trident and smirked. "Nice stick," he commented. "I think I'll keep it." By now, Enel was struggling to even stand. He spat out more blood and clutched his chest. Wiper watched in disbelief. Just how powerful is this man? He thought. All the warriors who have encountered Enel so far have been defeated effortlessly, including Kamakiri, and yet. "D don't think this is over. I insolent am mortal," Enel growled. He seemed to have trouble speaking. Luffy laughed. "No it isn't," he replied. He threw the trident back to his enemy, which caused half of the observers to freak out. Most notably perhaps, Nami. "Why did you do that?" she shouted from the behind him. Zoro shook his head. "It's honor," he told her. "He is allowing Enel to fight with his chosen weapon." She sighed and face palmed in irritation. Enel caught the weapon and then lightning surrounded it. "Gloam paddling," he announced. Everyone looked at the god in anticipation of what he was about to do. The weapon turned back into a staff and everyone blinked in confusion. Then the lightning surrounded it again and after a moment, he somehow started shooting tiny bits of gold from it at Luffy. Luffy dodged the approaching bits of gold that shot towards him with super speed, intended to pierce his body. Luffy kept swaying left and right, easily dodging most of them. A few pierced his clothes, but none of them could hit him. "How is he doing that?" Nami asked in shock. "It seems that's what mastering observation haki means." Zoro replied, however he was shocked as well by Luffy's display. After a few moments of dodging, Luffy decided that it was enough. He activated his Soru and lunged forward, twisting and stretching his arm behind him. "Armament, Gomu Gomu no," he announced. A gold bullet brushed his shoulder, but he ignored it. "Rifle." He completed the attack name and struck Enel in the chest with the powerful technique. His foe collapsed on the ground. 47. Flawless victory. After defeating Enel, Luffy proceeded to ring the golden bell. Wiper tried to stop him, but he had already took off in the air. Of course, he He still hadn't mastered the air walking technique, so he kept crashing into random trees, ruins and above the forest, the beanstalk. If he wasn't rubber, he'd be seriously damaged from that. Below them, Robin finally explained to Wiper the other reason for why they came to the sky, which was to ring the bell so that the descendant of Norland would hear it, and after hearing it, Wiper was moved enough that he stopped being hostile to them. Usopp stayed on the ship and took care of so it arrived on the agreed place. Sanji apparently followed after Nami and Isa after they were chased away by the giant snake in an effort to protect them, but he was too slow, so he arrived after everything was over and done. Which Zoro mocked him for. Of course, Sanji couldn't stay quiet and retorted that he was just saying that because he still hadn't awakened his haki. Zoro told him that he awakened it as well, which happened during his brutal fight with the strongest of the priests. Which wasn't that surprising. After all, their training of observation haki together was true brutality. Neither of them held back anything when swinging the bat, so it was imperative to dodge as much as possible using their senses. Regardless, after this and a few other mean comments, their conversation turned into a fight. The fight surprisingly wasn't stopped by the navigator, but by the archaeologist, since the navigator was busy sulking over there not being any gold in the City of Gold. When she was eaten by the giant snake, she found some gold in there, but she concluded that it wasn't enough. It wasn't 1 billion or more. Not even close. Nevertheless, she planned to tell Luffy to knock the snake out so they could collect it. Speaking of the snake, it woke up, but to the great relief of everyone present, she didn't start trashing around. On the contrary, the snake seemed to be taking extra care not to break anything in the ruined city. Or that was how it looked like. It seemed happy and started looking all over Shandora, ignoring the people. The archaeologist went to continue exploring the ruins and checking over the damage done in the fight. Although Luffy was partly responsible for that, she decided not to hold it against him, since he did not do it intentionally and actually prevented a few ruins from being destroyed before the fight. Zoro leaned on the nearest ruin and fell asleep after his argument with the cook, who was now trying to calm down the navigator. Having learned and tested his flying blade attacks, he was content. Though Luffy told him that his names for them were boring. Chopper was out, but he was checked over and bandaged by the archaeologist. Before she continued exploring, he was left alongside Zoro. Isa was glad that Enel was done, but was sad about everyone who was hurt. But then, Lackey found her and she knew that all would be okay. Other contestants in the survival game also started regaining consciousness. How they were alive nobody knows. Konus was glad to see that her Blue Sea friends were okay, but saddened when reminded of her father. Pagaya, however, was somehow still alive and found his way to her after a while. Gonfal and Pierre took off and located the imprisoned enforcers and freed them, and after that they went to locate both of the previously warring sites, who had just joined together in an effort to escape the island. Before he could reach any of them, however, a bell started ringing. After finally reaching it, Luffy used a Gomu Gomu no Giganto pistol to ring the bell, though he didn't use very much force so as to not destroy it. It was still enough to send it falling down, however. After hearing the bell, both sides of the war knew that their 400 years of fighting were over. It must have meant that Enel had been beaten too, but despite that they still stayed on their ships, not willing to take any chances. Speaking of Enel, he, after regaining his consciousness, quickly ran with the power of lightning, quite literally, to find his flying ship. He might have planned to use his Reigao, Thunder Greeting, to try and kill everyone and everything, but after nearly getting a heart attack, not that it would kill him since he's lightning anyway. When Luffy appeared underneath his ship and stole a lot of his backup jet dials, he must have decided against trying anything. He left with his ship, while mumbling something about going to Fairy Verth. After hearing the bell ringing, the huge snake Nola cried. Several south birds flew from the upper yard forest, heading towards the sound. Back on the blue sea, Mont Blanc Cricket, Masira and Shoju looked in the sky together when they heard the ringing. Cricket thought that perhaps now it was time to start chasing some other ridiculous legend. And he was sure that his two fans would no doubt agree with him on that. After a while and after being informed by Gonfal that it was safe to return to their homes, the two previously warring sides returned to their homes. However, many Skylanders wanted to see the enforcers who were confirmed to be mostly okay, and the Shandians wanted to find their warriors and Isa. Thus, a temporary truce was established. A truce that would ultimately lead to peace. After all the sides met and everything was explained and everyone's wounds were bandaged, a party broke out. It became clear that nobody would fight anymore, not even the previously aggressive snake. Usopp and Luffy managed to get a lot of different dials from the people, trading rubber bands, Usopp, and some of the jet dials, Luffy. Luffy had also collected a few of the axe and impact dials along the way from the fallen enforcers. Usopp got every one of the ordinary dials, while Luffy traded for a few flame dials, a breath dial. After all, releasing a fart in an opponent's face would be priceless. He also got the dial he was most excited about, the reject dial, though the man who traded it to him kept warning him about its deadliness. In the morning, Nami decided that they will enter the snake's stomach while it was still sleeping and steal the gold. Luffy refused to comply, knowing that there was more gold to be found. He only hoped that the people would be willing to give them some, but he thought they might. Gold was, after all, neither known nor valued as much here in the sky. A few minutes later, a short distance from most of the Straw Hats, a joined force of both Skylanders and Shandians pulled the golden bell back to the upper yard soil. Robin watched as they observed the bell and the poneglyph. After a while, she chose to appear. "What does it say?" somebody asked. The Shandian chief shook his head. She walked past the onlookers towards the bell. "Something best left unknown," he replied. "We have only." "Keep thy motives in heart." With closed mouth, she interrupted, startling everyone. "We are those who will weave history," she continued, with the ringing of the great belfry. He gasped. "How do you know these words?" he asked. She didn't stop to look at him and continued walking past him. "They were inscribed on the ruins of Shandora," she answered. "You've been charged with guarding this for generations, correct?" "You mean to say that you can read the writing?" the chief asked in disbelief. Several onlookers gulped. "Possessing the name of a god, the ancient weapon, Poseidon," she replied. "It tells of its location." Several people started talking at once. She said it was a weapon. "Ancient weapon, what's that? Why would it say that?" She didn't answer as she was deep in thought. "Another weapon," she mused, "different from the one in Arabasta." She turned to leave when someone told her that was not all. He pointed at the smaller inscription in the gold, next to the poneglyph. She turned and immediately, her eyes widened. "Gold D. Roger," she gasped out. She read the rest of the inscription. "I have come here and will lead this passage to He world." "Pirate, Gold D. Roger, the Pirate King?" she spoke. "So he did come to the Sky Island, just as Luffy said. But what does this inscription mean? More importantly, how was he able to use the writing?" After a while, her shock only increased, as she realized that he must have meant what she is searching for, the Rio poneglyph. Outwardly she didn't show it, but she was excited. Her dream was a step closer. Flashback. "You had your own reasons to comply with Crocodile. What were they?" "Protection. And the chance to see the poneglyph of Arabasta. I'm searching for the Rio poneglyph. I can offer you both if you want." She smiled, then she turned around. "Chief, this poneglyph has already fulfilled its duty," she told him. "Its duty?" he repeated. She turned back to the poneglyph and considered her findings. "You mean?" The chief started after a moment, interrupting her from her thoughts. "Our duty has been fulfilled?" Tears started gathering in his eyes. "We don't have to fight any longer?" he asked. "I see. Our ancestors' wish has been fulfilled." He fell on his knees. A few of his men became concerned, but he was good. He was glad, relieved. However, such an emotional moment can only exist undisturbed for so long. "Ah!" Everyone turned their heads in the direction of the voice. "Ah! What's that?" someone asked. Then something crashed in the nearby tree. Robin barely resisted the sudden urge to face Palm, already knowing who it was. Everyone looked at the tree trunk, where a certain Rubberman was stuck. "Again," said Rubberman, proceeded to get his little head from the tree trunk and then fell down on the ground, causing many of the observers to wince. After a while he got up again and looked around. "Oh, Robin. Weird awesome," Luffy chirped out in greeting. Robin lifted a hand in greeting, while Gonfall shook his hand at his nickname. "So you found the poneglyph, eh Robin?" he asked with a grin after he noticed what was underneath the bell. She nodded, but also noted in her mind that Luffy had said the word correctly. "That's great," he announced cheerfully. He looked at the bell. "And the bell is made out of gold. How cool is that? She smiled. How much do you think it's worth? He asked her. Her eyes widened. Luffy, we can't take this. It belongs to, she started. Actually, the chief interrupted her. We can't give you the bell, but you can take the support pillar there. Luffy grinned. Really? He asked. Many of them nodded. That's a great idea, someone said. After all, we need to repay your crew for all you've done here. That's great. Nami went to take the gold that was in the snake's mouth, but this is worth much, much more than that. Snake's mouth? Everyone asked. Luffy nodded. Yeah, Nami was eaten by the giant snake while we were fighting and she found some gold in there, he continued. Everyone's sweat dropped. Why would anyone willingly enter a giant animal's mouth? So we can take this? Luffy asked. The chief nodded and smiled. You did defeat Enel for us, he replied. And we won't miss the gold. It's not worth very much here on Skypia, you see. Luffy grinned. Then we'll gladly accept the gold. Robin answered with a smile. The chief ordered the able-bodied men to wrap the gold in some sort of giant paper or something. Luffy presumed it was to conceal it, but he could help but think that the Skypans were way too optimistic if they thought their crew could take all of the pillar. By the way, kid, you remind me of Roger, you know. Gonfall commented after watching the Skylanders prepare the Straw Hats' gift for them. You give off the same air that he did. Luffy turned to him with a wide-eyed expression. Really? He asked. I remind him of the Pirate King? After that he grinned. I am AD as well. My name is Monkey D. Luffy. He continued after a few moments. Maybe that's the reason. We Ds are quite similar, or so I hear. The knight's eyes widened for a split second before he also smiled. A name with a D? He asked. I see, it suits you, I think. Luffy laughed. Robin looked at him. What do you know about the will of D, Captain San? She asked him. He pouted. Again with the Captain San. He grumbled. She shook her head. You're the first pirate captain to dislike being called captain, she told him. He looked at her with a raised eyebrow. You know, there's only 7 of us so far, he told her. There's really no need for formalities. She shrugged. I guess you're right, she finally admitted. Mind telling me now, Luffy? He chuckled after she emphasized his name. Well, I don't know much about it, he admitted after a while. Just that Ds tend to cause massive global-sized changes. He smirked. I guess I've already caused some of those, he said after a while. After all, I'm pretty sure Arabasta, Drum and Kokoyashi trust me way more than the government right now. I hope that doesn't change once my father is revealed. You know, Robin said after a few moments. You said that I was mysterious, Luffy, but I think you're the greatest mystery in this crew. He looked at her with a thoughtful expression. Is that so? He asked her. I'm not the only one who thinks so, she told him. The crew has also been talking about you a lot. He sighed, and, he asked. They're concerned about you. About what happened to you, she answered. Luffy, why do you have nightmares? Isn't it normal for people to have nightmares? He asked her. She shook her head. Not if you have them so often, she told him. He opened his mouth to say something, but refrained from it. What happened to you? She asked again. He shook his head. Like I said, I can't tell you anything yet, he replied. You know, the only reason nobody else has said anything is because Swordsman-san forbade them, she told him. He looked at her with widened eyes. Does he know anything? Luffy shook his head. When we first met, I've told him that I'll explain anything once our crew's main positions are filled. He answered after a while. She nodded. So he doesn't actually know anything? She asked. He shook his head. She sighed. You can't keep this from your crew forever, you know, she told him. He looked at her. I don't intend to. A few minutes later, Luffy and Robin marched alongside the golden pillar, which was being carried by the Skypians. After seeing them approach, the rest of the Straw Hats, who were carrying bags of treasure, proceeded to run away, thinking it was some sort of cannon. Hey guys! Luffy yelled. Stop! They seemed not to hurt him, so he shook his head, earning a chuckle from his companion. He activated his Soru and dashed ahead, quickly catching up to them. Hey, what are you guys doing? He asked. What does it look like, shithead? Sanji yelled. We're running. Luffy chose to ignore the comment and instead asked for a, why? Don't you see that cannon thing? Usopp yelled. It's not a cannon, Luffy whined. Everyone stopped. Luffy started looking into their bags. What especially caught his eye was the sword that was in Sanji's bag. He picked it up, looking in wonder at its golden design. Then he unsheathed it and looked at the blade. His face fell as he noticed that the blade was beaten up and ruined by time. Unsurprisingly, he reached into Usopp's bag and pulled out a golden ring with a ruby in it and put it on his right index finger. He looked at it. Looks cool. Hey, Nami yelled. You'd better not take that ring. Luffy looked at her with a raised eyebrow after pulling a crown out of Chopper's bag and putting it on his head. Seriously, Nami? He deadpanned. You're going to annoy me for taking one little ring after getting you all that gold? She gained a tick above her eye. What gold did you get us? She shouted with razor-sharp teeth. We got this ourselves. You refused to go, remember? Luffy grinned. I was talking about that gold. Luffy chirped out cheerfully and pointed at the approaching giant object. TT, that's all gold leaf. He nodded. All their jaws fell on the ground. If that's all gold, it's way more than a billion, she stuttered. He nodded. Her eyes turned into berry. Nami, from now on, we're billionaires, he told her and grinned. What she did next was totally unexpected. Hey, Luffy, she called. Free hug. She hugged him and Luffy returned the hug while chuckling. Everyone gaped at her. Sanji was sulking. Why does Luffy get to hug the beautiful Nami Swan? He said in his depressed state. Luffy's sweat dropped. Hopeless Sanji. He thought. We become the richest crew in paradise and that's all you think about. She let go of him. Sanji-kun. She chirped out cheerfully. Free hug. Immediately he jumped up to hug her, his mood changing completely. Hey, love cook, stop groping her ass. Zoro commented. Sanji glared at him with his only visible eye as he let go of her rear. Oh, I'm so happy I don't even care, Nami yelled out in joy as she released him and went to hug Chopper, whom she nearly crushed with her hug. If you're so happy, why don't you forgive my debt? Zoro asked her with a smirk. Usopp stared at him with a, you're so asking for it, expression. Humph. Like Nami-san would do that, Sanji smirked. Done, Nami shouted. Everyone's eyes bulged out. After a moment Luffy smirked. Hey, Nami, I need a few billion for expenses, he told her. Everyone looked at him in horror. Luffy, you're so dead. Usopp thought while he was being crushed with a hug. As long as you use them well, Captain. Nami announced. Everyone's jaws dropped into the ground, even Luffy's. Wow, she is really happy, Chopper announced. For a moment there I thought Luffy was a goner. After a while, Nami went running towards a very bewildered-looking Robin to give her a hug as well. When the gift arrived to the ship, the Straw Hats quickly learned, when comparing the pillar and the ship, that there was no way they were going to get all that on board. Half of it was the most they could possibly fit and even that was stretching it. Luffy quickly put himself and Zoro to use as they started to cut the golden pillar into smaller and smaller pieces and then put them in large wooden boxes that the Skylanders were kind enough to bring. Many were also put into the big paper thing that the pillar was previously wrapped into. After all, it wouldn't be good if they just left them lying on the deck without any kind of concealment. Overall, after many hours of near slave labor, they managed to fit roughly half of the gold on the pirate ship, going merry. Do you wish to know how much gold they got? Yes. I bet you do. 48. Just an ordinary day in piracy. After landing back down on the blue sea, with the help of a friendly octopus, the wound in the ship's keel expanded. Luffy knew this. He heard the creaking, but since his crew was in such good spirits, he simply didn't have the heart to tell them yet. After some emergency repairs by Usopp, they set sail towards the next destination. Luffy knew already what that was. Water 7. He hoped to avoid both of the near disasters the crew suffered there. He was pretty sure that with proper handling of the situation, Usopp wouldn't leave the crew again, but it was another matter with Robin. He didn't know what he should do with her. Would she really do the same thing considering how much stronger he had proven to be this time? Logic told him no, but there was that uneasy feeling. You can do it, Captain. A familiar childish voice encouraged him. His eyes opened and widened. He sat up on the hammock that he had laid on. Mary? He asked in thought. I'm still here, my captain, the voice chirped out cheerfully. Do you think Robin will do it again, Mary? He asked. You don't know, so I don't know, Captain, the voice told him. He grimaced. Right, he thought. He looked at the door for a few moments. You know, it's really awkward if you know all my thoughts, he thought after a while. Captain, the childish voice scolded. I'd never betray your thoughts. There was a silence for a while. Even the dirty ones. The voice added after a while. Luffy's jaw dropped slightly, while his face gained a tint of red. He huffed and turned his head to the left. The voice laughed cheekily. Luffy stood up after a moment and got a shirt on. My ship just accused me of being a pervert, he thought to himself. He half expected another comment from the childish-sounding voice, but thankfully he received none. He shook his head. He climbed up the mast and headed towards the kitchen, walking between the large boxes and crates of gold on the deck. I wonder what Sanji made for breakfast. Luffy thought, and a few ideas flashed in his mind, making his mouth water. Then as he approached the door, he overheard some things being said. But what if he overhears you? A voice called out, presumably Usopp. Nami Swan can talk about anything she wants, Sanji swooned. Luffy could just imagine him swirling around with a heart in his eye. Right. Thank you, Sanji-kun, Nami answered. My pleasure, Nami-san, the blonde cook answered. I exist only to serve a goddess such as yourself. Humph, idiot cook, a gruff-sounding voice commented. Why you shitty Marimo? The cook responded. Enough, Nami yelled and presumably bonked their heads. She sighed. Now what do you think? Is he gay or not? Luffy's eyes widened. What, he thought, they're talking about that. I don't think you should be talking about this. Zoro answered her. For one thing, it's none of your business, which. Oh shut up, Zoro. The orange-haired navigator shushed him. Luffy smirked. It's so nice to hear Zoro defending my privacy like that, he thought. Yeah, don't talk to Nami Swan like that, Sanji yelled. ARRM, Sanji-kun? Nami asked. Luffy heard something that sounded like a mini tornado move across the room. Yes, Nami-san. He asked after a moment. What do you think about it? She asked him. He was quiet for a moment. The rubber bastard is probably gay. He spoke after a moment. He never did appreciate the beauty of our lovely ladies. Thanks, Sanji-kun, Nami told him. Luffy could hear someone snort. Yeah right. Zoro replied. You're only agreeing with her because you want to get into her pants. Why you shitty? Honestly, if your advances were any more obvious, you'd be asking for her panties. Zoro continued. A fight presumably broke out between them, while Luffy had to hold his mouth with both of his hands so as not to erupt in laughter. Then something crashed in the kitchen. Luffy assumed it was Sanji and Zoro getting pounded into the ground. Anyway, Nami announced in a dangerous tone, Usopp? I'm not going to say anything, he answered. Oh, come on Usopp. Nami pleaded. Usopp sighed. No, he told her. I don't care if he's gay or not. I'll lower your debt if you answer, she offered. You haven't asked Robin yet, he told her, she sighed. Robin? Nami pleaded. Foo, if you want to know, just ask him yourself, she replied. After all, he's standing in front of the door. Luffy looked around and saw an eye on the nearby wall. He glared at it and pouted. After a while he opened the door and entered into the kitchen. He grinned upon seeing the stairs. She, you guys are all so funny, he told them. They blinked a few times. Is breakfast ready yet? He asked after a moment. Soon, Sanji replied. He nodded and grinned and then sat on one of the empty seats, which was between Robin and Zoro. Usopp was on the other side of the table. Sanji was standing and Chopper wasn't there, because he was on watch duty. Next to Zoro sat Nami, who shot him an annoyed look. So, she asked. Luffy turned to her with faked confusion. She. So, what, Nami? He asked. She raised her clenched fist. Luffy flinched slightly. Are you gay or not? She nearly yelled. Robin, who sat next to him at the table, trying to read a book, shook her head with a small chuckle. Luffy gained a thoughtful expression. How should I put this? He said in a quiet tone, but then he raised his finger. Ah. He pointed with his right index finger at Nami's chest and with his left at Robin's. I like those, he said and grinned. Everyone looked surprised by the blunt proclamation. Nami gained a tick above her eye. That's way too blunt, she yelled and punched him. His neck stretched and his head fell into Robin's bosom. He quickly stretched it back and glared at Nami. "Nami," he whined. "Why'd you do that for? Now Robin's going to be mad at me." He turned around and looked at Robin, who indeed put her book down on the table. She turned to her right where the rest of them sat. She crossed her arms. "No, Robin, don't strangle me," Luffy yelled, but nothing happened. He blinked in confusion and turned to his right. He saw Nami getting pushed into Zoro's lap by a multitude of hands. The hands then soon disappeared. Humph. Witches and their fun. Zoro grunted in annoyance. He did not appreciate being part of Robin's revenge. "Marimo," Sanji yelled angrily. "Stop pushing Nami-san's head into your lap." Luffy snorted. Other sweat dropped. Well done, Sanji, he thought. Way to completely misinterpret the situation. Sanji. Usopp told him and shook his head repeatedly. Fu. My, Nami-san seems to like Swordsman-san. Robin commented. Nami, who just raised her head, glared at her. Luffy burst into laughter, as did Usopp. Nami Swan, Sanji yelled as he swirled back to her from the stove, crying anime tears. Tell me it's not true. It's not, she yelled and barely refrained from smacking his head. After a few moments, breakfast was finally ready and the crew started eating. Luffy started practically devouring the food and the rest of the crew quickly followed. Luffy was no more merciful at the table than in his previous lifetime, and he was much faster too, so it sometimes took all their effort to keep anything on their plates. Would you stop taking everything? Sanji yelled at him and smacked him over the head from the other side of the table. But Sanji, Luffy whined. It's training, speed training. That's a shitty excuse, he yelled at him, losing another piece of meat from his plate. Honestly, who raised you? Luffy? Nami yelled as barely prevented Luffy from taking everything from her plate. Luffy snatched a piece of meat from Usopp and devoured it. He stretched his left hand to Robin's plate, but it was slapped away by a disembodied arm. Gramps. Also, mountain bandits, he muttered while munching on a steak he stole from Zoro. Mountain bandits, Nami repeated, but then she glared at him when she lost half of the fries from her plate. Ignoring her glare. When with mountain bandits, I had to be really aggressive at the table if I wanted to eat. He devoured her fries and he smirked at her. She clenched her fist in anger. His right hand traveled to Zoro, who quickly stabbed his piece of meat with a fork. But thankfully, I was the best, so I had little trouble, he bragged and puffed out his chest. Yeah, I bet. Usopp said dryly. Well, Sabo and Ace usually gave me trouble and they sometimes managed to get something from my plate, but no one else could compete with me. Luffy continued. Most of the Straw Hats looked at him in surprise. Ace stole from your plate? Nami asked. But he has such good manners. Luffy grinned. Oh, don't let that fool you, he told them. He only got his manners like a year before they left, and only because Sabo told him that he's bad with people. He paused for a while, which was true, by the way. He continued, he didn't bother with me though. You were that hopeless? Usopp asked. The Straw Hats snickered. Luffy grinned. Nah, he always said that most people naturally seem to like me even if I'm rude, so there's no point. He explained to them. Usopp gained a thoughtful expression while he was munching on his food. It is kinda true, he admitted. Everywhere we've been, people mostly liked you, while they were usually scared of Zoro. Oi! Zoro yelled and violently stabbed his fork into a bunch of fries. See? Usopp muttered. Everyone laughed. Yeah, Zoro's face is pretty scary, Nami added. He glared at her, she laughed. You know, you're not going to disprove that by looking at me like that, she told him. He grumbled something and turned to his food, which was now gone. Usopp stood from the table after a while, having eaten his meal. I'm going to replace Chopper so he can come and eat, he told them. Luffy grinned. Okay. Keep an eye for any islands, he replied. Usopp nodded and left. Soon afterward Chopper entered the kitchen with a drooling mouth and sat down. Robin smiled upon seeing him. He was the first member that she formed a serious bond with. After all, they were the most alike. Also, he was cute and fluffy. Chopper started munching down on his food that was handed to him on a platter. Luffy left his plate more or less alone, knowing that he was up for most of the night. "Chopper, before you go to sleep I need to talk to you about something," he told him. Chopper looked at him and nodded. Food still in his mouth. He continued to eat. After a while Nami left the kitchen. "Ahem, Luffy?" Zoro asked. Luffy looked at him. What's up, Zoro?" he asked. "I've been thinking," Zoro started. Sanji snorted. "That's new," he smirked. "Oh, shut up," Zoro muttered, but didn't add the usual insult. "Anyway, I think the gap between us in fighting power is way too big." Luffy raised an eyebrow. "I think we should increase our training," he said. Luffy gulped down the food he was munching on. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "Sparring," Zoro answered with a smirk. "And not like that time before Arabasta. I don't want you to hold back." Luffy narrowed his eyes. "You know, I don't want to cripple you," he replied. Zoro sighed. "You don't have to go all out either," he told him. "Just make an effort. Use that Soru thing that you use for speed." Luffy gained a thoughtful expression. "Okay," he replied after a while, "but I won't use my sword." Zoro grinned. "Hey, I'm in too," Sanji said after a moment. Zoro snorted. "Like you could survive the training," he replied mockingly. "Why you stupid Marimo?" Sanji seethed. After a while longer and a fight which Luffy thoroughly enjoyed watching, Zoro left the kitchen to lift some weights. Chopper left to the men's quarters and Luffy followed him. After they arrived, Chopper turned around. "So what did you want to talk about, Luffy?" Chopper asked. Luffy sighed. "Do you have anything that would help me sleep?" he asked. Chopper blinked. "Well, I could make you something for that, but I'll need some things from the next island we dock at," he replied. Luffy sighed. "You don't have the stuff you need?" he asked. Chopper shook his head. "We're running low," he replied. "Before Sky Island, we were kinda poor and Nami said that we can only buy what we absolutely need." "Okay," Luffy said and smiled. "I should be able to wait until then. It shouldn't be that until the next island." Chopper looked at him for a few seconds. It seemed he had something to say, but was afraid of saying it. "What?" Luffy asked. Chopper looked up at him. "Luffy, who are Brook and Jimbei?" he asked. Luffy froze. "They know," he thought. They were my friends," Luffy answered after a while. He looked on the ground. But they died a long time ago." Chopper nodded solemnly. "Zoro said not to ask you," he told him. Luffy flinched. "But we all want to know what happened to you." Luffy nodded. "I'll tell you, but not yet," he answered. "I'm not ready. It's hard to talk about it." Chopper looked on the ground and nodded again in understanding. Luffy was thankful that Chopper didn't push the issue. "Oh, I need to ask you about something else," he suddenly shouted. Chopper was startled and quickly looked up. "You're our super doctor," Luffy started. "Shut up, praising me doesn't make me happy at all, asshole," Chopper shouted as he danced his little happy dance. Luffy smiled. "Chopper, what do you know about 49 for the future?" After a short conversation, Chopper went to sleep and Luffy left the men's quarters by climbing the mast. On the deck, Zoro was lifting his weights, while the two girls were relaxing in their chairs. Sanji swirled around them like a tornado, offering refreshments, even though they exited the kitchen not very long ago. Usopp was on the crow's nest. He was the one he was most worried about. Should he tell them now? No, Chopper went to sleep and he'd prefer if he could tell everyone at once. He sighed in displeasure. The girls noticed his annoyed expression. "What's wrong, Luffy?" Nami asked. He shook his head. "Nothing," he lied. He could see Robin eyeing him suspiciously, but he ignored it. "If we should have to fight the CP9, which we probably will, regardless of what Robin does, we'll need to be as strong as possible," he thought to himself. He headed towards the figurehead. "There's also the problem with Ace," he thought. "I can't really help him much right now. From what I know he'll get captured in the next 2 weeks or something like that, but I can't just leave everything and go after him." He sighed again. "Not to mention that I have no real idea where he even is. I only know the direction. If only I'd have killed that fat bastard in Jaya," he mentally scolded himself. Screw Whitebeard's request. I should have just ignored it and said he attacked me. He really didn't want to go through either Impel Down or Marineford again, but unless something changed, he was headed in that direction. He'd have to storm the Great Prison again. That, at the very least, was nearly certain. This time it should be easier, he thought to himself, but it didn't help any. Marineford, and to a slightly lesser extent, Impel Down, was his own personal hell. Flashback. I'm so close, he thought. Ace is in view. In front of him, Kizaru materialized. Ooh, it's Straw Hat, he announced. The celestial dragons will be on my case if I let you go again. He raised his leg high and kicked. A beam of light shot from the end of his foot. Death Wink, the greatest swordsman in the world, slashed wildly, sending powerful flying blade attacks across the battlefield, using only a fraction of his strength. Now, what are you going to do? The swordsman asked. You're being pushed further and further away from your brother. Back where you started, Kizaru mocked and kicked him across the battlefield, not even bothering to use much haki. Smoker sped towards him using his Moku Moku no Mi and struck him across the head with his sea stone-tipped jute. Straw Hat, he snarled, you won't leave this place. The encircling walls surrounded them. Whitebeard's attacks did not work against them. Magma rained from the sky. I must save Ace, he thought. He jumped across the many terrified pirates, who nearly lost all hope. He ran ahead, unknowingly making hundreds of them follow his lead. He was hit by several cannonballs. He was bleeding everywhere. Ararara. You've finally made it here, Aokiji announced. Quite an entrance, son of dragon, Akainu continued. This youngster sure is scary, Kizaru commented. Luffy looked above them at Ace. But, you're not ready for this stage yet, Aokiji told him solemnly. There is no way you can beat us, you know, Kizaru said. He tried to get past them. He activated his gear second. He followed after the pieces of frozen wood that he had thrown at the admirals and went through Kizaru's logia body. Too slow, Kizaru told him as he appeared in front of him and kicked him into a building. Blades approached his brother's head. AC, he yelled. Sand blades cut the executioners. An ice blade hit him in the shoulder. I owe your grandfather, Aokiji announced, but I have no choice. You've chosen your own death. I, Vice Admiral Momonga, stake my pride as a member of the Navy on stopping you here, Straw Hat. He has no more energy, Momonga mused. Dalmatian smirked. I'm not surprised, he said. He's just a rookie, after all. Kizaru shot a laser beam through his body, intentionally aiming not to kill. Luffy fell on the ground. He could no longer move. He looked up at the admiral. Without enough strength, you can't save anyone, Kizaru told him, no matter how hard you try. He smirked. Now will you please go away already? He kicked him across the battlefield. I can't believe the great Whitebeard himself would let reckless trash like you lead his army. Eva-chan, I want to make this my final request, Luffy said desperately. If I let you die here today, I won't be able to look Dragon in the eyes again, Eva told him. If I can't save Ace, I'll want to die, he stabbed him with his nails. But it wasn't enough. Everything he had, and it wasn't enough. At the end, his brother collapsed on the ground, dead. Luffy, Zoro yelled. The Straw Hat captain finally snapped out of his nightmarish memories. He felt pain in his right hand. He looked at it. It was blackened by haki and clenched. Drops of blood fell on the figurehead. He had broken through his own armament with his nails. Luffy, Zoro asked again. He unclenched his fist and took a deep breath. He stood up and turned around. What, Zoro? He asked. You're bleeding, the unofficial first mate told him. Luffy wiped his hand in his shorts. It doesn't matter, he replied. Zoro looked at him in concern, but then sighed. Do you want to go sparring? He asked. Luffy blinked. Okay, he replied. Oh, and the crap cook wants to go as well. Zoro continued. Do you mind a 2vs1? Luffy shook his head. No, not really, he replied honestly. Zoro and Sanji were both already quite strong, but with his speed and haki, it didn't really matter. However, they didn't have much room to fight, as the crates and smaller boxes were everywhere. Except the deck above the storage room, the front of the ship. Luffy went to the right of the figurehead, while the other two stood on the left. If you focus, you should be able to keep up, he told them. He waited a few moments for them to prepare. Sanji tapped his shoes on the ground and Zoro took out all three of his swords. Then Luffy activated his Soru. He dashed ahead with a punch aimed for Zoro. The swordsman barely dodged it. In fact, the fist brushed his right shoulder. Sanji raised his right leg and attempted a sideways kick. but Luffy ducked underneath it and then jumped backwards, landing on top of his leg. Zoro ran towards them and slashed at Luffy. Sanji lowered his leg and Luffy would have fallen, but he kicked the air to stay in place. He blocked Zoro's swords by covering his head with his crossed arms while infusing them with armament haki. He kicked with his right leg and hit Zoro in the stomach, sending him into the railing. At the same time, Sanji attempted a high kick, aimed for his ribs, but Luffy dropped from the air, causing the kick to miss. Sanji slammed his foot down on Luffy, but he blocked it with one of his hands and pushed his leg away. Zoro came from the other side and dashed ahead in an attempt to do a Santoryu Onigiri. But Luffy used his Soru and kicked the ground underneath him and punched ahead, stopping all three swords when they were in the same position with his fist. Much like Mihawk did when they fought. Sanji came from behind and kicked Luffy's legs, making him fall, but Luffy used one of his hands to touch the ground and then kicked in the direction of Sanji with both of his legs. The cook jumped back to dodge the kick, but his chest was still brushed by Luffy's feet, causing him some pain. The captain jumped back into a standing position. The green-haired swordsman attempted to slash Luffy, but he jumped in the air with Soru and slammed a foot down on Zoro, which connected and slammed him into the deck. Sanji jumped into the air with a kick aimed for Luffy's stomach, but the captain easily dodged it by moving his body and used his own kick to send Sanji into deck as well. Zoro picked himself up and sent AF Luffy, but he unsheathed his sword and deflected it so that it flew somewhere in the sea. He sheathed back his sword and used his Soru to dash towards Zoro with a punch ready. The swordsman somehow blocked the punch with two of his crossed swords, but he was unable to stand up to the overwhelming force of the punch and so was sent into the railing again. This sparring continued for a while longer, until Sanji and Zoro were tired. Luffy was happy to find that while they were unable to really match him in any way, they were fully capable of reacting at the speed of his average Soru. He didn't really go all out with his Soru, but he didn't really restrain himself too much either. Their strikes were usually much too slow, but it was start and they managed to get a few hits in. In the strength department, Luffy also did not go all out and only used his observation haki for avoiding some of the attacks and armament for blocking Zoro's swords. They agreed to continue this training every day. Luffy was also pleased to find that their observation haki developed to some extent. They were able to dodge a few moves that they wouldn't have been able to otherwise. A few hours later, a while after the reindeer doctor woke up, Luffy strode from the figurehead towards the rest of the pirates. "I need to talk to you guys about something," he announced. Everyone stopped in their activities. He sighed and turned to Robin. "Could you go and replace Usopp?" he asked her. "We'll be in the kitchen. You can listen in with your powers." She nodded and started climbing the mast. Luffy sighed and motioned for everyone to follow him. He opened the door and entered the kitchen, where Sanji was. "Hey, shitty captain," he protested. "I don't have any snacks for you." Luffy shook his head. "I have something to tell everyone," he replied. Sanji blinked a few times, but then nodded. Luffy waited for everyone to sit down. "Luffy, what?" Nami started. Luffy raised his hand. "Wait for Usopp," he told her. After a while, Usopp entered through the door. An ear appeared on the wall. Luffy sighed. "Okay, everyone's here," he began. He looked at every member of his crew. "What I'm about to tell you isn't good news," he continued. They looked at him in surprise. He sighed again. "That night, when Usopp and I saw a ghost, I didn't just see the ghost, I spoke to him," he said. Everyone gasped. "So why you did speak to him?" Usopp stuttered. Luffy nodded. "So, what did that ghost say that got you so serious?" Zoro asked. The others nodded. "First things first," Luffy answered. "You need to know what that ghost is." He paused for a moment. Everyone looked at him. "So, what is it?" Nami asked impatiently. "It's Mary," Luffy replied. Everyone looked at him in confusion. What do you mean, Mary?" Chopper asked. Luffy sighed. "Like I said, it's Mary," he repeated. Sanji's eyes widened in realization. "You don't mean, the ship, do you?" he asked. Luffy looked at him for a moment and then nodded. Hey, don't be ridiculous," Nami stuttered. "You couldn't have spoken with the Going Mary." Zoro gained a thoughtful expression. "But how come you're the only one who heard it?" he asked. Luffy shrugged. "No idea," he admitted. "But Usopp saw the ghost as well." Usopp nodded. Yeah, but I couldn't hear anything, he said. Luffy kept saying that he heard someone calling him though. Luffy nodded. But, it doesn't matter if you believe me or not. Luffy continued. Either way, what Mary told me is true. Everyone looked at him. He sighed and took a deep breath. The thing is, he started. Our ship is dying. Everyone's eyes widened. And Mary said that? Usopp asked quietly. Luffy nodded. Is it true? Chopper asked. Tears started gathering in his eyes. I'm no shipwright, but the keel is damaged. Luffy said after he nodded. That means the ship can't be repaired anymore. He sighed. Everyone was quiet for a few moments. So, we'll have to replace the ship? Zoro asked solemnly. Luffy nodded. Usopp stood up. Everyone looked at him. No, he said. Luffy looked at him. Usopp, he began. No, Usopp interrupted him. Mary is our ship. And not just that, she's more than that, she's our nakama. He glared at them. We can't just replace her, he yelled. After that he stormed off. Luffy sighed and followed after him. The rest of the Straw Hats remained seated. Usopp, wait, Luffy yelled after him. Usopp turned around. Why? He asked. So you can tell me that we'll replace the ship again. Luffy grabbed both of his shoulders with his hands and looked him dead in the eyes. Usopp, we're in the Grand Line, he told him, we're pirates. But, Luffy, Usopp started. If our ship breaks down in the middle of the ocean, who will come to help us? He asked him in a low tone. Usopp looked struck. Even if we send a call for help, who will come for us? Luffy asked. We're pirates. People want us to die. Usopp looked on the ground. I know you love the Going Merry and I'm sorry, but it won't even make it to the New World. He answered. Usopp looked up at him. He had tears in his eyes. But Luffy, Mary's our ship, he said, and Kaya gave it to us. Luffy sighed. Look, the keel is cracked. Luffy said. And the fact that the ship even has a ghost means it's already too late. Usopp looked down again. Usopp, let's not fight about this. Luffy continued. This is unavoidable. I'm not happy about it either. Usopp nodded. I'm sorry, Luffy, he whispered. Luffy smiled. It's okay, Usopp. 50. Marine Admiral Kuzan, Aokiji. They approached the next island. Luffy recognized it immediately. From the distance, everyone could see the extremely long trees, along with the very long grass. The island itself was also very long. The Long Island. Luffy thought. He grinned. What's this place? Luffy asked cheerfully. It's cool, there's grass everywhere. Humph. I don't know why you're so excited, Luffy, Sanji said. This place looks plain to me. Nami nodded in agreement. I wonder if it's inhabited? Robin asked. Luffy grinned. One way to find out. He yelled and jumped off the ship. Yahoo! Hey! Nami yelled with razor-sharp teeth. Chopper convinced Usopp, who was still thinking about Mary, to come along, and they both jumped off the ship as well. Luffy ran ahead and noticed a weird-looking animal. It looked like a bear, except it was extremely tall. What's that? Chopper asked. A person, Luffy laughed. There's no person this tall, he told him and threw himself at the animal. It's a bear. There's no bear this tall either, Usopp yelled, but followed his example along with Chopper. He's fluffy, Luffy yelled as he nuzzled against the animal's fur. But the long bear had enough of it and shook them off. Meanie! Luffy yelled and stuck his tongue out. Hey Luffy, look, Chopper yelled and pointed at something. Luffy followed where his finger had pointed and saw some sort of fruit. He stretched and grabbed it. He took a bite. Ooh, it's an apple, he called cheerfully. He grabbed two of them and threw them at Usopp and Chopper, who caught them. Try it. Oh, this is good, Chopper yelled. Luffy laughed. He noticed a few more long animals going past them. A long fox with a long tail, a long deer, a long stork and a long dog. Seriously? Luffy yelled. What the hell? He ran up to the dog and petted him. Shake, he called. The dog gave him his paw. He saw Usopp attempting to impress Chopper by trying to do the limbo underneath the long dog. Luffy snickered. Sit, he ordered. The dog crushed the sharpshooter underneath him. Luffy laughed while Usopp struggled to get free. Finally, he told the dog to beg, so he stopped crushing the poor Usopp. He noticed 2 long bamboo sticks that extended into the sky. There's something with that, but I can't remember it, he thought. Then one of them crashed into him. Why you? He shouted and kicked it, breaking it. He heard shouting from above. Uh-oh, he thought. Then an old man crashed on top of him. After both picked themselves up, the man introduced himself as Tonji to the 3 crew members. He thanked them for getting him off the stilts and told them his dramatic tale of being trapped and eating apples on the top of the sticks for 10 years. By the way, old man, Luffy asked, why is everything on this island so long? Tonji turned around and faced him. I'd imagine an outsider like you would ask that, he replied. There is a reason. He pointed in the distance. As you can see, this island has a vast expanse of grassland. All the animals live such relaxed lifestyles that they've grown longer, he explained. Luffy's sweat dropped. Seriously, but then, a gunshot was heard from behind them. Luffy turned around and saw someone he did not want to see. It was Foxy and his 2 henchmen. Luffy sighed. Just by looking at me, he thought, he's already pissing me off. That horse now belongs to me, the split-haired pirate announced. He turned around and noticed that the white long horse, was trapped in a net. Yes, yes. The annoying woman with black things on her eyes, that resembled glasses but had no glass, said, this horse belongs to Oyabin now. Luffy strongly resisted the urge to face Palm. What kind of stupid-ass pirate randomly steals a horse? He thought to himself. He shook his head. Who the hell are you, anyway? Luffy asked. Foxy fell on the ground in depression. He doesn't know, he muttered. Luffy groaned. Oh, you're Foxy, Luffy exclaimed after a while. Foxy's head raised hopefully. The guy known for cheating in all of his Davy back fights? The captain of the Foxy pirates and both of his henchmen fell on the ground in depression. Luffy chuckled. He freed the horse from his net. He made his way back to their ship along his 2 nakama. He found the 4 underneath the Going Merry, apparently arguing with the inhabitants of the much larger ship that towered over their own. Hey guys! He yelled. Who are those guys? Luffy, why you didn't accept the Davy back fight, did you? Nami stuttered. Luffy grinned. Nope, he said. She sighed in relief. The 2 men of the crew looked at him in disappointment and slight annoyance. Why not? Zoro grumbled. They'll think we're afraid of them or something. Luffy shook his head. He pointed at the SXY Foxy, the ship of the Foxy pirates. Those guys, he said, are known as cheaters. Sanji looked at the pirate ship and then at Luffy. Seriously? He asked. Luffy nodded. Hey, don't insult us. Someone yelled from the ship. If you're scared, just admit it. Luffy raised his head and glared at them. The man who spoke and several others flinched and backed away under his gaze. A man worth 160.000.000 berry was intimidating after all. If you want to fight me, he murmured quietly, but everyone heard him nonetheless. I'll take you all on. Several of the men sweated. But I'm not playing a Davy back game against cheaters. He finished. He hoped that would shut them up. To be completely honest, everything about them just pissed him off. The captain himself was an ugly and arrogant bastard, not to mention annoying. Their eyewear was ugly and pointless. Their ship was okay, but it was full of traps. He also wasn't too much of a fan of Davy back fights. After all, their very purpose was to take crew members away from someone. Luffy did not consider that to be good. His words seemed to have made the pirates stop demanding a match. They pulled away from their ship and landed somewhere else. A few of them jumped from the ship, presumably to locate their captain. Luffy sighed. How come you know about that, Captain San? Robin asked him. He turned to her with a pout. Again with the, he stared grumpily. Luffy, she corrected herself, interrupting his grumbling. Ace warned me. Luffy lied. The truth was that Foxy, no matter how huge of a crew he might have acquired, was still a nobody. Saying he just heard about him might not have worked. The answer seemingly satisfied her, however. The Straw Hats headed to explore the island. When they returned to Tanjit's house, an interesting sight greeted them. An immensely tall individual stood in front of the house, snoring away. While asking if he should get them some refreshments, Tanjit bumped into him. Immediately upon seeing him, Robin tensed up. Luffy glanced up to her. Her eyes were wide. This was the first time that he witnessed her display outright fear, apart from maybe when Enel was about to electrocute her. The man removed his sleeping mask and looked at everyone present. His gaze stopped at Robin in particular. It's him, she thought in panic. It's him. Why is he here? She started backing away. Luffy, who was walking next to her, and Sanji, leaned towards her ear. Keep calm, he whispered to her. She looked at him, fear still in her eyes. How does he intend to handle this situation? She asked herself. No matter what happens, don't attack him, he told her quietly. Kuzan watched their interaction with interest. So, who are you guys? The admiral asked despite already knowing all about them. So, you must be a Mon? Chopper asked as he looked in awe at his height. The admiral looked below and noticed him, making him flinch. Ooh, a tanuki, raccoon, he exclaimed. This got Chopper a bit mad. I'm a reindeer, he yelled with razor-sharp teeth. I've got antlers, see? Oop, sorry. The man apologized and shook his hand in front of him. Anyway, it's great to see you again, Nico Robin. Everyone looked at Robin. Evard she was. Robin's really scared of him, Nami thought. Everyone else had similar ideas. Ooh, the man exclaimed and looked at Nami, or more specifically, her chest. What? Nami asked as she nearly jumped away, startled by the man. I see a knockout babe with super, he told her. You free tonight? Luffy and everyone else sweat dropped. What are you doing, you lanky bastard? Sanji yelled with shark teeth. Humph. His idea of flirting is even worse than yours, Arrow Cook, Zoro announced. Sanji turned to him with a face, reddened from anger. What did you say, shitty Marimo? He yelled. Like a Neanderthal, like you could know anything about that. But at least he's honest about it. Zoro finished with a smirk. A fight nearly broke out between them. Nami politely declined his request. After seeing how afraid Robin seemed, she didn't want to exactly yell at the guy, no matter how tempted she was. Who is this guy? Usopp asked loudly. This is, Robin began with a shaking voice. Marine Admiral, Kuzan. Luffy answered for her, also known as Aokiji. Everyone either gripped their weapons or tensed up. Zoro sweated. Against this guy, even Luffy has a good chance of losing, he thought as he nervously gripped his Wado Ichimonji. Ararara, don't be so aggressive. Aokiji replied and shook his hands in front of him defensively. I'm just on a stroll anyway, I'm not under any orders. He scratched his head. Anyway, you guys are, he began, but then gained a thoughtful expression. Forgot what I was about to say. You're not making any sense, Sanji and Usopp yelled in irritation. The admiral sighed. How can this guy be an admiral? Usopp yelled at Luffy. Are you sure it's him? Yes. Both Luffy and Robin said in unison, though Robin's voice faltered. I uphold the model of lazy justice, the admiral told them. Everyone's sweat dropped. Well, it's better than thorough or unclear justice, if you ask me, Luffy thought. Not sure if it beats blind justice, though. We can see that, Zoro told him. The admiral laid down on the ground, using his hand to support his head as he still faced them. What are you doing? Nami asked him. He sighed. I'm tired from standing, he replied. Anyways, I'm not here to arrest you, so just chill out. He sighed again. Luffy briefly wondered if the admiral was annoyed just by having to speak. I'm only here to report my discovery of your group taking in Nico Robin, he continued. He yawned. So that the bounty can be, what's the word? He stared at a random tree in the distance for like a minute. Recalculated. That's it, he announced after a while. He yawned again. 160 million plus 60 million plus 79 million. He moved his fingers on his free hand. I don't know, he said after a while, some big number. Too lazy to count, eh? Zoro asked with a sweat drop. Luffy ran up to him. Hey, Admiral guy, he greeted with a grin. I heard you have the ice logia. Aokiji blinked at the straw-hatted pirate. Could you show me? He pleaded. Make me an ice sword. No, a saber. No, a cannon. The admiral's sweat dropped, as did the other pirates. Show me some tricks, the pirate demanded. What am I to you, some circus freak? The admiral asked, but his voice was normal. It was as if he was too lazy to be irritated. Luffy grinned. "Oh, come on," he yelled, practically in his face. "Show me something." The man groaned. He stood up. "Fine," he grunted in annoyance. He looked at Tonjit. "You need to get to the next island, right?" The small man nodded. He packed everything he needed and then everyone headed to the beach. "So, how will you do that?" Zoro asked the admiral. Said man shook his head. "I'm too lazy to explain, so just watch," he replied. He approached the water and put his hand in it. He waited for a moment, calculating roughly how much power he'd have to release to do it. A sea king appeared next to him from the water. A few of the Straw Hats shouted for him to watch out. He didn't listen. "Ice Age," he finally announced. In an instant, as far as they could see, the ocean turned into ice, along with the Sea King. Straw Hat jaws were on the ground, along with the old man's. She, awesome," Luffy yelled. Everyone turned to him with their jaw still on the ground. "This is the power of a Marine Admiral," Robin said slowly. Fear did not leave her expression after first seeing the man. Aokiji pulled his hand out of the ice. He walked up to the old man and the pirates. He looked at the old man. "Just walk in that direction," he said and pointed somewhere in the distance. "The ice should last about a week, so take your time." He walked past him. "Dress warm," he continued. "It'll be a bit cold where you're going." "Is this a dream?" the old man asked. But then he quickly turned around. "Thank you, Admiral San," he yelled happily. The Marine just waved his hand. The Straw Hats helped the old man down on the ice along with his small wagon, or whatever it was. "Thank you, Marine San," the old man yelled and waved as he left. "Thank you, guys." The Straw Hats waved back. "Take care," Luffy yelled. After a while, they disappeared into the distance. The Straw Hats returned to the island, shaking because of the cold. Aokiji sat on the grass. He stretched his head. Luffy inwardly groaned. "So here it comes," he thought. The Marine Admiral scratched his head and looked at him as he approached. "What?" Luffy asked. He shook his head. "You're very much like your grandfather," he said after a while. "Childish and reckless, loud." Luffy huffed. "I'm the captain," he announced and puffed his chest. "I can be as childish and loud as I want to be." A few people's sweat dropped. But hard to fully understand. The Admiral continued, ignoring the interruption. He sighed. "Your grandpa helped me a long time ago," he said after a while. Luffy narrowed his eyes. "Kuzan mentioned that bit quite a lot." "Grandpa told me about you," Luffy told him, interrupting whatever he wanted to say next. The Admiral looked up in surprise. "Urara, what did he say?" he asked. Luffy gained a thoughtful expression. Flashback. "Grandpa, tell me about the admirals," Luffy suddenly asked while his grandpa and him were eating meat somewhere in the forest. The old man raised an eyebrow as he munched on his food. "Why are you asking that?" he asked. He gulped his meat. Then he got a victorious grin on his face. "Ah, you're finally considering becoming a Marine," he announced with a booming voice and a smirk. Luffy grimaced. "No way," he muttered. "Pirates are cooler." Garp lost his smirk. "What?" he yelled. "I'm a Marine, is grandpa not cool enough?" Luffy smirked. "Shanks is way cooler." He chirped out and laughed. The old Marine gritted his teeth. "Why you damn brat," he muttered and bonked his grandson on the head. He huffed and turned around. "If you're not becoming a Marine, I'm not telling you anything about the admirals," he said. Luffy pouted. But then he smirked devilishly. "If you tell me, maybe I'll think they're cool," he replied cheerfully. The Marine turned back to him, eyeing him suspiciously. "Clever brat," he thought. He sighed and shook his head. "Fine," he muttered. He gained a thoughtful expression. "Well, they are all a bunch of amateurs compared to me," he declared and puffed out his chest proudly. "But they're really tough. One of them could crush the three of you easy as pie," he continued, referring to the three brothers. "Wow, they're strong then," Luffy chirped out. Garp grinned. "Of course," he shouted, scaring away every bird in the forest. "Marines are strong." Luffy narrowed his eyes. "Pirates are strong too," he announced. His grandpa bonked him on the head again. "Shut up when I'm talking," he yelled. He took a bite out of his meat. "Anyway," he continued, "there's Sakazuki, Kuzan and Borsalino, but they're also known under their code names, which I don't really get. He shook his hand and then took another bite. Anyway, Sakazuki is a good marine, but hide expression on his face. Like someone just threw a bunch of dog crap into his face. Garp told him. Luffy laughed. And he's always on about absolute justice this, absolute justice that, he's really annoying with that. Luffy felt that Garp had more to tell him, but wouldn't say because he might fear that it had turned him off from admiring the marine. Nevertheless, he figured out that Grandpa did not really like the Magma Admiral. And he was happy to hear that. Then there's Borsalino, he continued. I don't really mind him, but he's kind of a weirdo. I never know what's going on in his head. He took another bite. Kuzan is kinda cool, he continued. I like him. Except being horribly lazy, he's a terrific marine. Still just an amateur though. He turned to Luffy. So, what do you think, Luffy? He asked. Luffy grinned. Grandpa is cooler, he announced. Garp got a slight blush. Why but Shanks is still the coolest, she. Luffy interrupted and ran away laughing. Why you damn brat? Luffy smiled at the memory. He looked at the Admiral. He said you were an amateur. He told him. The man rolled his eyes, but his lip twitched from a barely suppressed smirk. But that you're kinda cool anyway. The Straw Hats, except Zoro, looked at Luffy in shock. Your grandpa thinks of a Marine Admiral as an amateur? Nami screeched out. Luffy smirked. Grandpa is stronger than that guy, he said and pointed at the man. Aokiji shrugged. I'm not ashamed to admit that, he replied. Garp-san is after all, a legendary marine. Even though I have a logia devil fruit, I'd still be reluctant to fight him. Garp-san, Nami thought. Then, suddenly, a realization struck her. Garp the Fist? She yelled out. Luffy grinned. She. That's my grandpa, Monkey D. Garp, he said cheerfully. Everyone stared in shock. His grandfather is Garp, the Fist, Robin thought in shock. His brothers are Fire Fist, Ace, and Blue Gentleman, Sabo. He personally knows red-haired Shanks. When will it end? Hey, Marimo, why aren't you shocked? Sanji suddenly asked. Zoro smirked. Oh, I knew from the beginning, he announced. What? Everyone yelled. Luffy laughed. I'm afraid to ask who your father is, Luffy, Usopp said. Luffy's laugh became louder. His dad too? Everyone thought. Anyway, kiddies, Aokiji interrupted. Everyone looked at him. I was kinda thinking here. He sighed. Then he looked at them. Maybe you guys should all just die. 51. Conflict resolution. Aokiji observed the reactions of the Straw Hat pirate crew. The pirate hunter gripped his swords nervously. Nico Robin took a step back. She did not try to activate her power, but he had no doubt that she was prepared to. The long-nosed sniper readied his slingshot. He did not aim it at him, but he gripped it. The orange-haired woman tensed up and looked at his every action. The blonde pirate, who reportedly fought with his legs, tapped the ground with his shoe. The little talking animal suddenly grew larger in size and clenched his fists. And the captain? Straw Hat Luffy did not move, but rather narrowed his eyes suspiciously. That was not a reaction he would expect. It was almost as if he knew something which the Admiral didn't. The government doesn't consider you a real threat, he continued after a moment of tense silence. Not really, not yet. He sighed. His gaze rested on them, the captain in particular. But I know better, he continued after a while. Based on your previous encounters, however, we know that you are a formidable crew. You are few in number, but from what we have seen from you so far, numbers don't seem to matter all that much. He paused for a moment. You are a daring group of determined individuals. The Admiral continued. You've had quite a number of daring exploits in your short life of piracy, and you are rapidly gaining strength as well as reputation. He sighed again. Based on that alone, your little group scares the crap out of me, Aokiji concluded. Hey, wait a moment. Usopp yelled and waved with his hands in front of his face. Why are you saying all that? Didn't you just come for a visit? Luffy snorted. Everyone turned to him. You didn't seriously think we'd just randomly meet a Marine Admiral for no reason, did you? He asked in a low tone. Everyone's eyes widened. The Admiral shook his head. However, Aokiji continued, ignoring the interruption. That's not everything. Everyone turned to him again. Based on reports from Navy soldiers and civilian observers. The man continued. You, Monkey D. Luffy, have won each of your fights with relative ease. Luffy's eyes widened. Now, it is true that you have only so far been in East Blue and the first half of the Grand Line, but the fact that you've managed to get so far so successfully is quite, shall we say, unnerving. Aokiji said. He sighed again. Your exploits are considered to be quite daring even when compared with those of the other rookies, such as for example Basil Hawkins or Eustace Kid. He looked the straw-hatted captain in the eyes. There's also the fact that you seem to posse's armament hockey. He continued and pointed at him. Luffy froze. He knows about it, he thought. The admiral narrowed his eyes at him. Captain Smoker reported that you managed to defeat him twice. He continued. While the others may call Smoker incompetent or inexperienced, I personally cannot doubt his word. Luffy started sweating. You may have fooled everyone else in the world with that interview, but not me. The man concluded. Crocodile may be weak to water, but Smoker has no such weakness. And yet you defeated him twice. There's no way he was that careless. He sighed again. Then he looked at Robin. Then there's you, Nico Robin. He continued. She sweated. The size of your bounty does not just represent your strength, but also your threat level to the world government. Which is why a bounty of 79.000.000 berry was placed on your head at the age of 8. Luffy scowled. Damn marine bastards. He thought. If Grandpa wasn't so high up in the Marines, me and Ace would also get such ridiculous bounties for just existing. You betrayed, sidestepped, escaped, then found a new partner for you to use. Aokiji continued, startling Luffy from his thoughts. Time and time again you've rebounded and this time, you've chosen this crew as your next haven. He glanced up to Robin, who seemed quite startled and hurt by the accusation. How could the man who saved her when she was little, the man who knew the real reason why she couldn't find a permanent place in the world, say something like that? It also seemed to enrage Sanji. Hey, bastard, what are you trying to say? He yelled. What do you have against Robin Schwan? Usopp had to hold him back. I don't have anything against her. The admiral said. The only reason I know her is because she escaped from me once. But that was a long time ago. He stood up slowly. If you doubt me, know that every organization Nico Robin has joined until now has been brought to ruin. He continued. She was always the only one to escape. He smirked. Why is that? He asked. Nico Robin. The past has nothing to do with us, Luffy yelled. So just stop it. That's right, Usopp agreed. If we cared about the past, we wouldn't have an ex-pirate hunter or ex-thief on the crew. Oi! Nami yelled and bonked him on the head. Robin seemed to appreciate the trust they had for her. The past doesn't matter, Sanji yelled. Chopper nodded. That's right. Robin's our nakama, don't badmouth her, he told him. The admiral shook his head. He looked back at Robin. I see, he said. Poor fools don't suspect a thing. This of course enraged her. She crossed her arms. What do you want? She demanded. If you want to arrest me, then just do it. Arms appeared all over Aokiji, restraining him. Robin, don't do it, Usopp yelled out in panic. Robin! Luffy yelled. She looked at him. Flashback. Keep calm, no matter what happens, don't attack him. After a moment, Arms disappeared from the admiral. Urara, I really did think you were going to do it, he commented. He scratched his head. Regardless, you really should watch yourself around this. The admiral jumped back to avoid damage as Luffy slashed ahead with his sword. Afterward, Luffy immediately resheathed it. A drop of blood fell on the ground. The admiral's eyes widened. He brushed his right cheek with his right palm and looked at it. The rookie had broken through his logia defense and made a small cut on his cheek. Of course, the way he slashed he made it seem like he was trying to cut his head off. But what if he had expected him to move? His face darkened. He dropped his hand and glared at Luffy. You really shouldn't have done that, he said. Several of the Straw Hats gulped. Luffy smirked, but then he narrowed his eyes at him. You weren't stopping, he said coldly. I already said the past doesn't matter. He sighed. Whether or not you're an admiral or you think you know Robin, he continued, I don't really give a crap about all that. The admiral smirked. I see, he said. You aren't about to let me tell you what to do, are you now, Captain? Luffy grinned. You seem to get the point, he replied. Besides, I was the one who asked her to join and she hasn't done anything to deserve getting kicked out. A murmur of agreement could be heard from the crew. The admiral's eyes widened in slight shock. He invited her, he thought. She didn't weasel her way into the crew? That's right, Sanji announced. Our beautiful Robin Schwan stays with us. Robin smiled softly. Zoro snorted. You'd still let her stay even if she did do something bad, Arrow Cook, he yelled. That's not true, Marimo, Sanji yelled back at him with razor-sharp teeth. Luffy laughed. He turned around and headed towards the ship. Let's just go, he commanded. He received several uncertain looks, but after a moment, everyone shrugged and followed his example. Only, it wouldn't be that easy. Who said you could leave? Aokiji asked. Out of the corner of his eye, Luffy could see that the right half of his face had turned into ice. He sighed and shook his head in irritation. Go on ahead, he said. I'll have a little talk with the admiral here. He stopped and turned back to the marine. He waited for his crew to get far enough. You know, Luffy began after a while. Attacking over a cut on the cheek sounds like something Sakazuki would do. Aokiji scowled. Luffy Chuck L guy, him? He asked, once again narrowing his eyes. He chuckled. There was silence for a few moments, and he began again. Destroying 7 ships sounds pretty ridiculous for an 8-year-old girl with a non-destructive devil fruit. The admiral's eyes widened for a moment. Luffy laughed. She. The real reason for her bounty couldn't possibly have anything to do with her ability to read poneglyphs? He asked mockingly. The man looked struck. He knows about the real reason, he thought. Ararara, I didn't expect you to know that. The admiral commented in a cold tone. Just how did you learn this information? Luffy shrugged. I guessed it. He lied. Being able to read those words sounds like something pretty rare. He briefly considered telling Aokiji that he knew about the ancient weapons as well, but that would pretty much seal that they'd have to fight. You aren't ready for this stage yet, you know, Straw Hat. The admiral said after a while. Even with armament, you can't possibly think you could defeat an admiral, do you? Luffy shook his head. The admiral blinked in confusion. I only want to keep my crew safe, he said simply. The admiral sighed. The ice disappeared from his body. Luffy blinked. Damn you, Straw Hat. Aokiji thought. Attacking you after this would just make me feel bad. The admiral shook his head a few times, but then looked back at the pirate and smiled. I guess I owe you one for Arabasta, he said, so I'll let you go this once. He turned around and headed for his bike. Luffy watched him leave with a big grin. After a few steps, the admiral stopped and turned around. You know, he said, I really don't know why you want your armament hockey to be a secret. I mean, it's unusual for a rookie, but not really shocking. Some people just have a natural affinity for a type of hockey, like the Kujas. Luffy blinked in confusion. Kujas? He repeated. The man scratched his head. Ah, you don't know anything about them? He asked. Luffy shook his head. Well, they're the all-female pirate crew, Aokiji told him. Ah, Hancock and the others, he thought. He smiled. Urara. It seems you like the idea, the admiral replied and chuckled. I can't blame you. Many of them are super babes. He scowled and looked on the ground. Not very friendly though, he muttered. He looked back at the pirate. He scratched his head for a few seconds. I guess I can keep that secret for you, he said after a while. Luffy looked at him in total shock. I mean, you could have killed poor old Smoker twice and you didn't, so. Thanks, she, Luffy chirped out and grinned. The man shook his head. Don't thank me, Mugiwara, he scolded. This just makes us even. Besides, I never said I'd keep your secret forever. Luffy grinned. The man climbed his bike and drove into the distance. The Straw Hat pirate fell back on the grass, relieved. My plan is still okay. 52. Yonkou shop. After a few minutes of laying in the grass, Luffy headed back to the ship. He felt relief washing through his body. Aokiji may not keep his secret forever, but that was no necessary. All that was needed was a few weeks. He jumped up on the ship. Everyone was on the deck. Luffy! Chopper yelled and ran towards him. Luffy smiled as the reindeer clung on his leg. Hey guys! Luffy greeted. Everyone smiled as well. So, what happened? Sanji asked. Luffy looked at him and grinned. Aokiji said he owes us for Arabasta and said we could go. He told them. Everyone gasped. He, just let you go? Nami stuttered. Luffy nodded. So you didn't fight at all? Zoro asked. Luffy shook his head. Nah, he replied. If we did, you'd hear us. He glanced at Robin, who was looking at the ground. Hey Robin, he said. She lifted her head and looked at him. Don't worry about what he said. He told her. She nodded, but didn't say anything. You're our Nakama, so you belong on this ship. She smiled gratefully. That's right, Robin Schwan, Sanji announced cheerfully. Zoro chose not to say anything against the cook and instead just nodded at her. Hey, Sanji, Luffy called. The cook turned from swooning over the archaeologist and turned to him. Ake us something to eat. I'm hungry from all this tension. Hi, he replied and ran into the kitchen. Let's set sail, guys, Nami called. After a good meal, Luffy took the ship's Den Mushi and headed towards the deck. He settled on the front of the ship, next to the railing. A few of the crew members were interested. Are you going to call someone? Chopper asked. Luffy nodded. There are some things we need to get, but we can't exactly buy them just anywhere, he replied. Everyone looked in confusion. What do you mean? Usopp asked. Luffy looked at him. We need to get a new ship, right? He asked. Usopp looked on the ground, but nodded half-heartedly. Well, we don't want something like this to happen again, do we? Usopp and Chopper both looked up to him. Zoro, who was leaning on the railing, opened an eye. So, what are you going to do? He asked. Luffy grinned. Treasure wood, Adam. He replied. Everyone blinked in confusion. His grin widened. The Pirate King's ship was made from this wood. Everyone gasped. I've heard about this. A melodic voice announced. Everyone looked in its direction. There was an island once, where this tree stood. The island was ravaged by endless war. The never-ending conflict took many lives. Thousands of people died from the war, but a giant tree, Adam, stood through it all. Every time the war would end and the civilization lay in ruin, the people would rebuild their homes near the giant tree. Robin walked up the stairs, bringing her chair with her. She put the chair on the ground and sat on it. So, what's so special about this wood? She asked after a while. Everyone looked back at Luffy, who grinned. This wood can make a ship so strong, that cannonballs will just bounce off it, he replied. He remembered the Thousand Sunny, a ship so strong, that even when hit with more than 20 cannonballs, it still held strong, it was barely even damaged. He smiled as he saw the disbelieving faces. Seriously? Zoro asked. Luffy nodded. But it's expensive, he said after a while. Fortunately, we have more than enough money for it. How expensive? Another voice asked. It was Nami. Nobody had seen her come. She might have just teleported there when she detected the word expensive. Luffy's sweat dropped. Hey, Nami. Usopp greeted. Didn't see you come here. How expensive? Nami asked again, her eyes focused on Luffy. Luffy gained a thoughtful expression. Well, for a ship twice the size of Mary, it'd be 200.000.000 berry. He announced after a while. That was how much the original Sunny had cost. Everyone blinked. Are you sure that's expensive, Luffy? Zoro asked. I mean, considering how much we have. Most people just don't have that much money when they're buying a ship, Nami said proudly. Everyone smiled. Plus, it's illegal, Luffy added. Everyone looked at him wide-eyed and rare. So, how are we going to get it? Robin asked. Luffy grinned and pointed at the Den Mushi. We'll ask Shanks, Luffy chirped out. But first, we should decide how big it should be, so we'll know how much money we need. Everyone started thinking. Well, we should make it big enough so that we can have anything we want on it, Chopper told them. Luffy immediately imagined the Thousand Sunny that was as big as the Moby, with him standing on the now gigantic figurehead. Right, Luffy announced cheerfully. We need a giant pool and a giant indoor forest and a giant meat park and a huge bronze statue. Everyone's sweat dropped. And a giant. Before he could say his next suggestion, Robin used her devil fruit to cover his mouth with a hand. He glared at her. We also need to make sure that the ship is not too big, so we'll still be able to properly defend it, she replied, her hand disappeared. Luffy pouted. Well, I do want my statue at least, he replied. Everyone groaned. Hey, I'm serious. There was silence for a while. What do you say if we order enough atom wood for 400.000.000 berry? He asked. If it's too much, we can just resell it. He looked at Nami in particular. Well, I think it's fine, she told him. I mean, we have a lot of money. We might as well make sure our ship has everything we need or want. Usopp, Chopper and Zoro looked at her in shock. What? She asked, irritated. They just shook their heads. So, now I'll call Shanks, Luffy announced. He dialed the number on the Den Den Mushi. Moosh moosh, Luffy called. Hello? There was the sound of someone gulping down a piece of meat. Hey, Luffy, a voice replied. Luffy recognized it immediately. Hey, Lucky, he greeted. Lucky Roo ate another piece of meat. How you doing, Luffy? He asked while munching on his food. Well, it seems there are people as rude as Luffy in this world, Nami thought. She did not approve of people talking while eating. We just met an admiral, Luffy chirped out. The man on the other side gasped. Really? He asked. Which one? She, Aokiji, Luffy replied. Did you have to fight him? Another voice asked. Ah, Ben, Luffy greeted cheerfully. No, he let me go. Really? Ben Beckman asked in surprise. That's a new one. Luffy laughed. He said he owes me for beating up Crocodile, he said after a while. I guess that makes sense, the man replied. But none of the other two would have done that, you know? He sighed. Could you have defeated him if you fought? He asked after a while. Luffy grinned. Yeah, I think I could, he replied. Every Straw Hat looked at Luffy, surprised by his confidence. I see, Ben replied. You want to speak to the captain, right? The snail puffed out some air. It seems Ben was smoking. Yep. Luffy replied cheerfully. Need to ask him something. Okay. I'll carry the snail to him. They could hear the sounds of walking. After a while, the sounds stopped. It seemed the first mate had reached his destination. He knocked on a door and entered. Hey, Ben, someone said groggily, what's up? Another hangover, Captain? Ben Beckman asked in amusement. Luffy laughed. She, same as always, eh Shanks? He yelled cheerfully. Ow! My head. The captain of the yelled. The Straw Hats could just imagine him covering his ears with his hands. Anchor? Stop calling me that, Luffy shouted. The first mate chuckled. Ah! Shanks yelled. Luffy started laughing again. Several of the Straw Hats also snickered. Ouch, give me something for the hangover, Ben. Shanks whined. The eyes of a few of the Straw Hat pirates widened considerably. Flashback. Now, Luffy yelled, completely ignoring the fuming crocodile. Red-haired Shanks' impression. Luffy pretended to fall on the ground. Oh, man, I have such a hangover, ouch, Ben. Give me something for the hangover, he said in a pretend piaged his temple. Nami and Usopp burst out in laughter, while Robin's laugh was a bit more controlled. The rest of the Straw Hats blinked in confusion at the trio. Hey, the Yonkou whined. Why are you laughing at me? He humphed. What did I say? He asked in an even more whining tone. Luffy blinked at the Den Den Mushi a few times, also confused. I'm pretty lost too, Luffy admitted. True, the Yonkou's complaining might be funny, but it wasn't that funny. Captain San's impression of you was spot on, red-haired, Robin announced. Luffy glared at her. Who's this Captain San you keep talking about? He asked her in an annoyed tone. She chuckled. Foo. Lou, wait. You did an impression of me? Shanks yelled angrily. Luffy laughed. She, yeah, almost forgot about that, he replied. It was when Crocodile captured us. Luffy, Shanks yelled, before realizing something. Wait, Crocodile captured you? Luffy grinned. Yep, back when we were in Arabasta, he replied. He kept laughing and gloating over how defeated we were. The crew could see the snail phone sweat drop. I guess Crocodile is pretty dumb then, the Yonkou announced. Luffy laughed. That sounds totally like something Luffy would say, Zoro thought. She, yep, he replied. Anyway, we need some stuff for our new ship, so I called you. The Den Den Mushi sweat dropped again. You do know I'm not a shop, right? The red-haired pirate asked. Luffy pouted. I know that, he yelled, but then sighed. I just don't have any idea where the black market is. There was silence for a few moments. You're going to Water 7, right? Shanks asked. Everyone looked to Nami in confusion, since they did not know what the next island was called. Yes. Luffy announced, surprising everyone. Well, the black market is in St. Poplar, which is near where you're going. Shanks replied. I don't usually do this, but I could pull some strings and have them deliver the stuff to you in Water 7. He paused for a while, but you'll have to tell me what you need, he said after a while. Luffy grinned. Thanks, Shanks, he said cheerfully. Well, we'll need enough atom wood for 400.000.000 berry. Wait, your ship, is your keel cracked? The first mate, who was apparently still there, interrupted. Luffy's grin turned into a sad frown. Afraid so, he replied and sighed. Usopp looked on the ground sadly. Okay, what else? The Yonkou asked. Luffy regained his grin. Well, we should probably get a sea stone coating for the ship. Luffy replied. Can we do that? I think they should have that. Shanks replied. And it's a great idea, Luffy. Wait, why sea stone? Nami interrupted. Well, Luffy began. If you have sea stone underneath your ship, sea kings will ignore it. The Yonkou interrupted. So you can pass Calm Belt safely. Everyone's eyes widened in surprise. Sea stone has the same energy as the sea after all. Ben butted in. We'll be able to pass the Calm Belt? Usopp asked. Luffy nodded. Wait, why didn't I ever hear of that? Nami yelled. It's a government secret. Ben told her. Also, Kairoseki is sold at really high prices, Shanks announced. You should be prepared to pay at least 100.000.000 berry for the coating. What? Nami yelled. Shanks chuckled. There's only a few people who can get sea stone on the market and they jack up the prices. He replied. In truth, sea stone is usually hardly even worth a tenth of the price offered. We have the money. Luffy told him. The Den Den Mushi nodded. Nami sighed. It had better be worth it, she growled. Luffy snickered. She glared at him. Well, anything else? Shanks asked. Luffy gained a thoughtful expression. Well, some sea stone weapons would be nice, he replied. A few swords, a lot of bullets, stuff like that. Got it. The Yonkou told him. And if you hear of anything useful or something you think we'll need. Luffy added. The Den Den Mushi nodded. Oh, by the way, how is Sky Island? He asked. Luffy grinned. Well, there was this mean jerk with a lightning logia, who went around killing people, Luffy replied. So I kicked his ass of course. Lightning logia? The Yonkou asked. Gahaha, sounds pretty neat. Luffy laughed. She. Yeah, unless your opponent is rubber, he replied. An explosion could be heard in the background. Boss, someone yelled. The red-haired pirate sighed. Sorry, Luffy, but it seems some stupid rookie just decided to commit suicide, he announced. I'll order the stuff for you. We can talk more later if you want. See you soon, Shanks, Luffy replied. He hung up and gained a thoughtful expression. He tried to think if he forgot anything important. Hey, Luffy, Zoro called after a few moments. Luffy turned to him with a confused expression. There's a giant frog doing the front crawl. He pointed ahead of the ship where indeed, a very special frog was swimming. Ooh, a frog is doing the front crawl, Luffy repeated like it was nothing special. What? Nami asked. She looked at where Zoro had pointed. Ah, a giant frog is doing the front crawl. Robin blinked a few times and looked in that direction. Indeed, there's a giant frog that's doing the front crawl. She repeated with slightly widened eyes. A frog is doing the front crawl. Chopper repeated. Usopp's eyes bulged out. Why is there a frog in the front doing the front crawl? Usopp yelled. Asked. Hey guys, Sanji yelled from the crow's nest. Why is there a giant shitty frog doing the front crawl? She. I love the grand line.